Hello, I'm Nick Joyce. I'm a psychologist. I work at the Counseling Center, and I have a problem. It's actually the same problem that all of us have, and that's dealing with our minds and the thoughts and feelings that they give us. Along with me tonight is my mind. I make this gesture because I think about my mind as separate from myself. Nick and Nick's mind. It may seem odd to you. In Western society, we don't usually talk about us being separate from our minds. What I'm going to discuss tonight is the fact that we are not our minds. We are not the thoughts that our minds give us. They do not define us. And that even when our minds tell us very hurtful, mean things, there is another way forward. My mind's particularly anxious. I've been anxious the last couple of hours before coming up here tonight. But I've learned a way to manage that mind through loving it and a better way forward. Ask any collegiate mental health professional, and they will tell you that there is a mental health crisis among students. Our numbers at USF Counseling Center bear that out. We have record numbers of students coming to see us who are saying, "I need your help." This is a national trend as well. Our counseling center is not very different from any other place where students are at. Last year, our students took the American College Health Assessment. They told us in that assessment, 84% of you felt overwhelmed. 57% of you felt overwhelmingly anxious. 57% of you felt very sad. 53% of you felt lonely. 33% were so depressed it was difficult to function. 9% to the point where they thought about killing themselves. It's easy to look at these numbers and say, there is a crisis. What is going on? Why are college students so mentally ill? Easy to think that, right? After all, anxiety, stress, depression, those are not fun things, they're not healthy things, they're not things that we should experience. What I would argue to, though, is that anxiety, sadness, stress are all normal parts of being human and normal parts of the college experience. What's happened, though, is we've become so afraid of those things that we've sort of messed up the process as humans of how we deal with those things. So, in my role as a psychologist in the Counseling Center, students come to me every day. They sit down in the chair in my office and they say, "Dr. Joyce, help me with this thing." It could be stress, it could be anxiety, it could be an eating disorder, drug abuse, etc. But the essence of whatever they're coming in for is, please help me not have this thing anymore. Which makes sense. It's distressing. They don't want it. And one of the first things I have to do with them is tell them, right now I can't get rid of that thing. That may be hard for you to hear. There's no therapist that can get rid of what you are experiencing right now. There is a way, though. There's a set of skills that if we practice them can help you manage those experiences better, and they will become less distressing as a result. When I was an adolescent in middle and high school, I was very depressed. I met all the criteria for being depressed in the DSM, which our field uses to diagnose mental illness. You would have seen a kid who had a poor mood, sat alone by himself all the time, wasn't motivated, had low energy, didn't really enjoy doing stuff. Through a variety of experiences growing up, my mind had learned to sort of fear social interaction. It was constantly giving me thoughts of, people suck, it's awkward talking to people, you're going to embarrass yourself. And so my mind went to work trying to solve that issue for me. Essentially it said, you know what, Nick, let's just avoid dealing with people. So I sat alone in my room a lot. I went home from school, I went up to my room, and I went in AOL chat rooms because that was my social outlet. That's what I could do to talk to people. I didn't have to feel anxious or awkward talking to people in the chat room. And guess what? That behavior worked. Every night that I went home from school and I talked to people on AOL, I did not have to feel anxious. I did not have to feel awkward. That's the amazing thing about our minds. They are excellent problem solvers. It solved my problem of being anxious and awkward and embarrassed. Except, every short-term day that I wasn't feeling anxious and awkward, I was beginning to suffer. I was beginning to develop a longer-term issue that was much worse for me. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to try new things. I wanted to have a life, but I wasn't doing anything to get there. And guess what? I became depressed as I just sat in my room every day talking to people in AOL chat rooms. I'm going to step back from my story for a second and tell you a couple of realities about the human mind. Number one, every single one's got one, Every single person has it, and they all operate in the same way. Our minds want to protect us from pain. It's a great asset that's helped humans develop a whole bunch of things to help us out in life. We developed electricity to deal with darkness, air conditioning to get rid of humidity in our hot Florida summers. Great ways to deal with problems like balancing a budget, finding the fastest way to a new location. But it doesn't work so well when applied to the problem of our thoughts and feelings. So, our mind can come up with a whole bunch of different ways to deal with our thoughts and feelings. Netflix, food, sex, drugs and alcohol, procrastinating with friends, all temporarily help us get rid of a difficult thought, feeling, or memory. But when we sober up, the show ends, or our friends go home, that same thought, feeling, or memory still exists there, oftentimes much worse than we first try to get rid of it. Secondly, our minds are easily influenced. Our friends, our family, society in general, all give us messages about what we should be doing in our lives. So, my mind was influenced by the kids who teased me in middle school. Your mind may have been influenced by parents who expected straight A's. Your mind may have been influenced by that dog that bit you and now you're afraid of dogs. All sorts of different experiences growing up cause our minds to be affected and cause us to feel these different things. Finally, our minds influence us out of love. But just like our parents or our friends may care about us, they sometimes give us advice that isn't really helpful. My mom tells me to do stuff all the time that is not useful for me at all. So I have to note that she's doing it out of love, but it's not particularly helpful for me. So, there I was, 16 years old, cynical, anxious, depressed, awkward-looking teenager. Not a great recipe for having a fun life. And I don't know when or how it happened, but I realized I gotta do something different. I didn't have the terminology or the understanding that I have now as a professional, but what I did then is what I'm going to detail for you now, and it's basically at the core of every therapy session I now conduct. So the first skill is called diffusion. Diffusion is simply the idea that I need to create space for my thoughts and feelings. I think about it like my glasses. In a typical day, I'm walking around, everything's okay, until a situation happens. At that moment, my mind throws a thought at me that I have no control over that goes on my face like these glasses. For me last night, it was thinking about this talk today. As I sat there trying to relax and hang out and watch TV, my mind just spoke up and said, "Hey, Nick, remember you got this big talk tomorrow. Do you know your stuff? What if you mess up? This thing's going to be recorded. People could see it and laugh at you. People in the audience might not get what you're talking about." And it started to give me all of these anxious thoughts that just sat here on my face. It changed the normal experience of, I just had this talk, to something that was much more anxiety-tinged. So, diffusion is the difference between, I'm going to bomb this talk tonight, and I'm having the thought that I'm going to bomb this talk tonight. It's the difference between looking through a thought and looking at a thought. I also call it stemming. At any moment, I can fill in the blank of the stem that goes, I am having the thought of blank, I am having the feeling of blank, I'm having the urge to blank. I don't judge these as good or bad. They're either useful or not useful. Here's another way I think about that same concept. This is my mood. This is when I'm feeling good. This is the first week of the semester. There's nothing to do. Classes get out early. It's probably the easiest week for all of us, right? So I'm feeling great. Come midterms or finals, I'm going to be down here with my mood. This is just the best I or really anyone's going to do, because there's more to do. There's more stress, there's more papers, there's more all-nighters, just more to do. But here's the problem when my mind comes in. My mind looks at this mood, and it goes, Nick, this is not good enough. You should feel like this. You should feel like this all the time. This is not good. And now all of a sudden I'm judging my current experience. I'm going, this isn't good enough. I need to be back up there. And it starts figuring out a whole bunch of ways to try to make me temporarily feel good. So I procrastinate, and I put off my work, and I feel temporarily here, and guess what? I end up going way down here because it always rebounds. And what I do as a therapist is I help students just stay here. I'd rather you be here than down here. This part is under our control. This part oftentimes is not. A family member getting sick, me getting sick, my parents losing a job, me not getting a job. All of these things temporarily bring us down here, and I have no control over. But how I respond to them, how I deal with them, can keep me here, or it can bring me down here. Over time, I can eventually get back up here. But I have to manage my mind in order to do that. So, first I got to diffuse from my experience. Secondly, I get to make a decision. When my experience is out here, I'm looking at my thoughts and feelings and stuff through them. I get to make one decision. Am I going to go the change route, or am I going to go the letting go route? What I can't do is sit right here in the middle with the glasses on, thinking and analyzing and worrying and losing hours and days and weeks. Because ultimately, I have these two options. So for me last night, it depended. It always depends. Last night, I was sitting there, my mind gave me this thought about this talk tonight, and I got to say, okay, do I want to change it or do I want to let go of it? Well, if I wasn't prepared, if I needed to rehearse more, that same thought that said, hey, Nick, you're going to screw up, that actually could be a very useful thought because it would help me get off the couch, stop watching TV, go rehearse my talk more. It's helping me not fail. But the fact of the matter was I had done this plenty of times, probably too many times because of my anxiety, and I was set to go. I wasn't going to really gain anything more from doing it again. So I had to mindfully note that thought, say thanks for the suggestion, and I let it go. And guess what? It came back about 30 seconds later. I did the same thing again. And I did it several times over that course of the night. I think about like my dog sometimes. When I get a rotisserie chicken, my dog is right up in my space, begging me for that food. Eventually, if I ignore the dog, she chills out. It takes a little bit of time though. But if I give her a little bit of that food, she's going to keep coming back. I apply that same method to my mind. And eventually, the thoughts went away. I was able to have a relaxing evening. So, I've diffused from my experience. I've chosen to go a change or letting go route. And third is I have to develop an attitude towards my life. I call this process versus outcome living. I can only deal with the process of how I am in my life. My mind, though, is outcome driven. It goes, hey, Nick, you need to get an A on this test. You need to get that job. You need to get that person to like you. Only a limited amount of what I can do controls that. I have no control over what that person who's hiring wants of me. I don't have a whole lot of control of what my professors think of my ideas. So for me, this was very applicable when I was dating. I wanted to find a partner. I wanted to do that. But my mind was so focused on the outcome of rejection that it said, Nick, stay at home, don't talk to people, you'll get turned down. That doesn't get me very well in the dating world. And so I have to go and talk to people. The process is I'm going to talk to people. I have no control over if they have any attraction to bald guys with glasses or get freaked out when I tell them I'm a psychologist. All I can do is go and talk to people. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to get rejected. And I got okay with that. Because that one time out of 10 is when I get what I need, what I want, what I'm looking for. But I have 0 chance of doing that if I just sit at home doing nothing. So, I call this talk Learning to Let Go because I'm constantly doing it. I haven't gotten to some state where I'm there. I have to keep working on it. I have to keep practicing it. And at this point in my life, it's actually pretty easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It's not hard, but sometimes I do backtrack every once in a while. I lose an hour. Maybe I lose an evening to being anxious. And that's okay. I just mindfully note it, give myself some forgiveness and grace, and move on. I challenge all of you to try to love your minds and work on that skill. Even when your mind is saying things to you that aren't very nice, when it says, you're a loser, you're not good enough, you're going to fail. Whether it's thinking about going to that club where you don't know anyone, whether it's talking to that professor during office hours about a concept you don't know, whether it's talking to that person in your class that you got a crush on. You can note your mind's suggestion to not do that thing, let it go, and still go engage in that action with all the anxiety and distress that's involved in it. I'm still anxious up here talking to you right now, but I just chose that I wanted to do it, and I'm going to deal with my anxiety while I give this talk. And if you begin to go that route, you may just find yourself a little bit closer to a limitless life.